You know, it's not incidental that so many of our most famous rebellion leaders
were preachers.
Were literate preachers.
That's right.
Right?
That's
Nat Turner, Demar Vesey.
Yes, right. Yes.
When they read the Bible called them to fight for the liberation. This is why they had two Bibles. They had a slave Bible that stripped out
slaves obey your masters.
Yes. Right. It stripped out, you know, now I'm forgetting what's the Exodus?
Moses.
Exodus.
The Moses story. Mm-hmm.
So the Bible for slaves did not have the chapters that would lead them to read them and say, oh, okay, well, maybe we need the Exodus ourselves, right? So when we look at that tradition, when we look at so many of the great leaders of the civil rights movement, were reverends, right?
That's right.
Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, course, Reverend Martin Luther King. I mean, you could just
goes on.
Lawson,
absolutely.
You could just go down the list.
That's right.
Now there are, of course, we're always churches that we're not doing that.
Sure.
But I think when you look at now the role of the church, that we are losing a lot of that tradition.
That social consciousness.
Yes. Right. Certainly the rise of the megachurch.
Right.
The rise of the prosperity gospel. A belief that we can't engage in politics, and not partisan politics, because it's nonprofit organizations, churches can't be partisan, but Black people keeping our rights is not a partisan political issue, right? So that instead of doing that, they just want to get their money, right?
Absolutely.
And they want to not engage in politics, not engage in activism, even as their people are suffering. So I think that we, I've been very disappointed. And it's not to say that there are not any pastors in any churches.
Many of them.
Certainly there are.
Sure.
And, you know, President Obama came out of that tradition with Reverend Wright and coming out of the Black liberation theology. And then what happened? Right. So I wish that we would see, and this is really the same thing I would say for a lot of HBCUs, is we get so afraid of losing funding.
That's right.
We get so afraid of being punished politically that we end up not fighting for the communities that need us to be fighting for them.
Yes. Absolutely.
And what I always say is it worth it? Right?
That's right.
Is it worth it to lose your soul? Is it worth it to find success at the expense of your people?
That's right.
Because at the end of the day, you have to look yourself in the mirror. And as we see the suffering of so many of our folks, like, I'm aware every day that most people that I come home to in my family and in my community don't live like me, right? They don't have the benefits of the life that I have. And so we can sit here and say, well, I've made it. Or we can sit here and say, by the grace of God, I made it.
Right.
And a lot of other folks with equal talent, equal ambition did not.
Right.
And so it's our job, to me, to always remain in that struggle. And I don't think a church, especially the Black church, can truly be biblical if you are divorcing yourselves from the everyday struggle of your people.
Gotcha. Yes, ma'am.
I would actually like you to answer that question.
Say it again?
I would like you to answer that question.
What I really wanted to say is that this is about you, okay?
No, go ahead. I want to know.
I would say it is a dangerous question, but I think I'd say two things. One, I definitely think we need the church. I think we need the church because if we can ever get to the place where we discover, first as Black people, that what Black people are doing in the church is not what white people were doing with the church. And if we can ever get back to the root of why Black people ever used the church as a mask and a cover for the African ritual that we were really doing, because really we were meeting in the church to destroy them, right? And to make sure we were not becoming like they were. So I think we need the church, but we have to have a complete overhaul of the theology, right? I think the most dangerous thing in the world is when we close our eyes and pray and we don't see ourselves. Right. I think that's highly dangerous. Because it means that we're praying to the people we think we don't like, right? The second thing I think is that we have to get to the place where we understand that spirit is bigger than the building, right? That you can walk with God, right, whether you enter the building or not. A last question, I think, do I get one more? Okay, I get one more. That is, that I think is very important is the recent murder of Sonia Massey. It's so unbelievably, blatantly, senselessly insane, right? It's just so absolutely, positively crazy. But it is not unprecedented, right? This is something that keeps happening, you know, to us as a people over and over and over and over again. And ironically, I'm not going to ask so much about the murder, but something that comes along with it, and that is the American judicial system worth our effort to attempt to right it, or should we divest ourselves from even fooling with it at all? Like, is it worth what it seems like it would take for us to overhaul that thing in order for us to be protected, right, by the same laws of the land? Or is it too far gone?
I mean, so...
Maybe it's the only choice we got. I mean,
yeah, you know, you could ask that question about the American project in general.
That's right.
Right? Like, is it worth us being invested in it and thinking we can reform it and perfect it and finally force it to live up to its highest ideals? Certainly, we can try to divest from the legal system, but it will not divest from us. Right? So as much as we might want to withdraw, it's still going to be impacting us.
Right, right.
It's still going to be used. We know, like, you know, if you read the book, there's 2 chapters. One is on fear, and one talks about how our legal system was set up for that moment.
Yes.
Right? The fear of, it's called fear, but it's not about Black people's fear of the police or Black people's fear of vigilante justice. It's about the fear that white people have that lead them to be violent against us because they are afraid.
Afraid, yeah.
And that is going to exist whether we divest or invest in these systems.
Good point.
So
Good point. Yeah.
One thing that I understand, you know, we are 13% population in the country that enslaved our ancestors.
Right.
In the population of in a country that until 10 years before I was born committed legal apartheid against us, right? I was born 10 years after the passage of the great civil rights legislation, so a decade before my birth, most of my, you know, father's young adult life. You could discriminate against me and everyone who looks like me just because our ancestors were enslaved in everything, in housing and education and employment and voting legally. Right? So this is our country, which means to be Black in America will be the struggle. That's just the truth.
Of the day. Yeah.
And there's no sugarcoating it. To be Black in America will be to struggle.
Right.
And part of that struggle is the continuing struggle to convince enough white folks that the country we have is not the country we have to have.
Right.
Anything that we're able to obtain, it can only be obtained by convincing enough white folks to join us in the fight. That is an untenable position, but that is a position we are in. So I don't think it's possible to withdraw. I don't think it's possible to cede the fight to make these institutions treat us in our full humanity, because they are going to be engaging with us whether we fight them or not.
That's good.
And one thing that I understand about Black folks is that our very existence is testament, right, to fighting against impossible odds.
Yes.
To making that which seems impossible manifest.
Absolutely.
That is what we have done. There's no reason Frederick Douglass in 1855 could have believed that he could see the end of slavery and help bring that about, but he did. There's no reason that Rosa Parks or Fannie Lou Hamer or Reverend Shuttlesworth could believe, right, in 1955 that they could end racial apartheid in the United States.